Growing up, I knew that I wanted to go to U of T. It's not too far from home. I'd visited the campuses, I had the merchandise, and I just knew that I wanted to go there. I also play soccer though, so part of my decision was based off of where I'd be able to play. And in my final year of high school, I attended a showcase, and one of the people that came up to me wasn't even a scout, but an alumnus. And he was telling me about this small school on the East Coast and how they needed a goalkeeper. I'd never even heard of it. And the coach reached out to me and he offered to bring me on a recruiting trip. And I thought that I probably won't go, but it's a free trip to somewhere I've never been. So I visited in January. And the weekend that I was there quite literally changed my life, because I remember as soon as I got back on the plane to go back to Ontario, I wished that it was bringing me back to X. The community there was something that I'd never experienced before, and I wanted to be a part of it so badly. So, in my typical procrastinator fashion, I waited until the very last moment possible, and then I committed. And when I made that switch from going from U of T, a massive school in a big city, to St.FX, a small school in a rural environment, that wasn't even the only thing that I was switching. Originally, and the people who know me now might find this hard to believe, but I planned on majoring in astrophysics. And now at St.FX, I'm an English major. I haven't looked at numbers in a couple years. And I was making all of these huge switches, and I was gonna be up and away from home, away from my family and everything that I knew for the very first time, and I was praying that I had made the right decision. And then I got to St.FX in August, and it was the beginning of the hardest months of my life. When I was in high school, I didn't really do much of like the party, social environment. I'd never had a boyfriend, never been in a relationship, never even kissed someone, and I was kind of just very innocent coming into university. And then I got to St.FX, and I got to know my professors. I made a bunch of friends. I started making my own food in meal hall. I loved all my classes. I started going to parties and being social. And I also got raped. And then I completely folded in on myself. I stopped paying attention in class. I stopped speaking up. This is the shaking that I was talking about. I stopped speaking up. I started drinking almost every day, despite not being allowed to drink during soccer season. I stopped eating. I started throwing up. I ruined some really close relationships to me, and I was basically just self-destructing in every way. So that was tough. And that was the first couple of weeks of October. And that month was hell, because a couple weeks later, I was in study hall with my teammates, and I got a phone call from my mom that my best friend was in the hospital, and we weren't sure if she was going to be okay. And so I flew home the next day. I took that phone call, and I was just in a daze, and I left study hall sobbing, and I told all my professors that I'm not going to be able to come to class. I have to go home immediately. And they all understood completely without even asking why. One of them actually drove me the 2 hours to the Halifax airport. And I got home, and I spent the next few days in a psych ward, which is a horrible place to spend time. They're really not very cheerful. And it was so heartbreaking to be there and to realize that when I was going back to St.FX, she would be staying there for a little while longer. And while I was waiting in the airport to go back, I got another phone call, and it was from my friends at school, because one of my other friends had been raped by two of my friends. And it felt like my heart just kept on breaking. And in the meantime, I kept pushing my trauma further and further away from myself so that I could extend myself for others. And my friend's case went public. And so I get back to school, and my soccer team took action almost immediately in developing a campaign called St.FX Strong with the slogan, "We stand together, end sexual violence." One of my teammates developed the logo, and it was shared all over social media by what seemed like the entire campus community. It was printed on buttons, stickers, and t-shirts, and that I still see all the time 2 years later. And I get back to school, and I really couldn't focus. And that next week, my women and gender studies class was talking about sexual assault on university campuses. And I remember feeling like I already knew enough. This wasn't a class that I wanted to be paying attention to, and so I didn't. And let me just say that my women and gender studies professor is the most badass feminist that I've ever met in my life, and she does not typically let not paying attention fly, but she also knew to an extent what was going on in my life, and so while I was scribbling in my notebook, she kindly pretended that I was taking notes. But what I was actually scribbling was a poem. And it was about rape and about everything that had happened, and I couldn't focus on anything else. So after that class, I stayed behind, and my professor came up to me after, and I apologized for not paying attention in class, and then asked if I could read her the poem that I wrote instead of listening. And she said that she would love to hear it. So I read her the poem, and her positive feedback meant the entire world to me, and it gave me the courage that I needed to go forward with an idea. So I left that classroom, and I edited the poem a little bit. And then I went to my friend who had a video camera and knew how to edit, and I messaged a couple of my group chats to come to a specific location at a specific time, and in a few hours, I had a video. I watched it by myself in a room way too many times, and then I uploaded it to YouTube, shared it on my social media platforms, and shut my laptop. I'm going to share that video with you all now.
I used to wonder when the simple act of walking home made us so small, and wonder why she feels the need to pretend to make a call to her fake boyfriend, and wonder why this fake boyfriend has been used so much, and wonder when these questions will be pulled back up from under the rug, and wonder when they respect our no's more than the idea of being someone else's possession, and wonder when bringing this up will create more than just tension. And then I began to wonder why it was that him having drank too much makes it okay, and why when she does the same we tell her that, well, she shouldn't have drank so much anyways, and wonder when we will finally start to shift the blame. And now I wonder if you felt her heart break when you broke into her. I wonder if the halt of her breath ever made you wonder if maybe you should halt as well. I wonder if the impact of your fist on her skin had any impact on you at all. I wonder if hurting her ever made you hurt as well. I wonder if telling her that she was 6 years younger than your younger sister told you anything at all. I wonder if the strength that you used to hold down her arms made you feel strong. I wonder if it was a complete lack of appetite that fed into yours. I wonder if her complete inability to respond made you pause at all. I wonder why this has happened over and over and only right now seems large. I wonder why this fucked up justice system makes it so hard to come forward. I wonder when we started to take plagiarism more seriously than sexual assault. I wonder exactly who it is that makes that call. I wonder when this will stop. Almost as much as I wonder when we will start to fight back. I wonder if we can raise our voices loud enough to finally be heard. I wonder when every single one of us will stand behind her. I wonder when the silence that's been established will finally be disturbed. I wonder if it is now.
I shared that video, and then pretty quickly, I started to get a lot of messages. Both of my parents called me, begging me to tell them that it wasn't about... I don't know if that was me. Both of my parents called me, begging me to tell them that it wasn't about me. And so I told them that it wasn't about me. I told everyone that it wasn't about me. It was about my friends, it was about the movement, it was about everything. And pretty soon after that, I had reporters started to message me, and they were asking the same kinds of things. And I told them about my teammates, and about the campaign, and about everything that had led to it. And the video kept getting views, and all of a sudden we were in the National Post, on CBC, CTV, just about everywhere I looked. And campus felt different. I was in my first year, but it felt like people were starting to know who I was. I was walking to my classes, and people would stop me and tell me how much my video meant to them. And I started getting approached by more and more people who were asking me to speak at these different events. And if there was a rally or a march, there was a suggestion that Emma should hold the megaphone. And campus just felt different. And it felt like I had accidentally put myself in a position where I was an activist. And that was a lot. And I was getting all of these messages and people asking me to come and speak, and I didn't really know how to do that because at the same time, I was still just pushing my own trauma further and further away. And I was never acknowledging that. And this cultural shift wasn't something that stopped in my first year, because the next year, St.FX had another public case of sexual assault. And the activist community once again rose up, this time under a name called X Resist. And there were marches, campaigns. There was even a time where I don't even know the right word to use here, but basically approached the president of the university with a megaphone at an open house event. It spurred movements at other universities, and it felt like, once again, everyone was being able to come together in a way that was just absolutely remarkable, doing something that wasn't really possible at any other institution. And still, I wasn't owning my own experience, and it became exhausting. Then I was asked to speak at a Take Back the Night event in Antigonish, and my creative juices were just not flowing. So typically when that tends to happen, I have this habit of looking at old notebooks for things that I used to write. And one of the things that I found was the very first draft of the poem that I wrote in my first year. And after I left that Women and Gender Studies class, I only made one real revision in it. But it was changing every pronoun in the poem. Originally, the poem was about me and my experience. But the poem that I shared was about her and her experience. And I was tired of hiding behind her. So, at Take Back the Night, for the very first time, I owned my own experience, and it was something that I hadn't shared with my best friends or my parents, literally anyone in my life. And the first time that I talked about it was in front of dozens of people and a camera. And looking back, I recognize that that's because that's where I felt most comfortable. I was with the same people who elevated my voice in the first place, who made me feel like I had something to say and provided me a space where I was able to fall back. After I owned up to that experience, the full weight of the trauma finally hit, and I was not doing too well. But I was still part of this conversation about sexualized violence. And that was exhausting. And I think that it's the same for so many people who get involved in these communities of activism, because we want to get involved in things that directly affect us. I got involved in the fight against sexualized violence because I was directly impacted by it, and it's the same for so many others, whether it's yourself or a family member, a teammate, a partner. These conversations are exhausting. They're re-traumatizing, and at times they can be so frustrating. But we have these communities of support. And that's what I realized is basically the only reason that I'm even able to stand here. Because my community of support helped me get through times that I didn't even think I'd be able to survive. It was my team, my coaches. It was everything that made me feel like I could take leaps and they would catch me. Because when I came from Ontario, I was switching from the idea of I was switching everything. I was switching everything that I wanted to do. I was taking such a massive leap into the unknown. And I fell so hard. And despite that, I would keep making that same decision over and over again. Because when I got lifted back up, it was on the shoulders of the strongest people that I know, in a community where I'm able to thrive through times that I didn't think that I could survive. And I am so thankful. I'm so proud of myself, of my teammates, of my campus, of my community. Because when you have a community like that, it makes it a lot less scary to take leaps, because it's not so hard when you fall.